This video is packed full with beautiful fall DIYs. Hey, it's Donna from CreArtive by Nature, and I'm sharing all my top favorite fall DIYs. So for this first DIY, I had picked up this flan pan from the thrift store for $1.99, and I absolutely loved the color. I decided to make this into a tray, so I'm using this candle holder that I had DIY'd in a previous video, generously applying some hot glue to the rim, and then I'm going to be placing the pan upside down and pressing the candle holder into place to create my stand. Once you have your pieces all glued together, you can start to decorate your tray. I'm using this beautiful vintage doily along with these amber glass jars that I got, and I filled them up with these beautiful grasses I had from my front yard. Dry grasses and florals are such a trend this fall, and I thought it would be great to include those. I'm also going to add these faux leaves. The beauty about a project like this is that you can use anything that you have from your stash. If you can't get your hands on some grasses from your front yard, just let me know and I can make a small little short video for you harvesting some grasses from a nature walk. So I'm also going to include these little flower seed pods that I had picked from my front yard and these branches that I had foraged. And I've got a mix of some florals and velvet pumpkins from Dollar Tree. So I'm going to start to just layer the branches and all the other accessories that I had rounded up for this project. There's no right or wrong way to do something like this. I just wanted to create a beautiful fall display for my fall decor. And I thought it would be really fun to just create something that was really easy to make from a thrift store find. Here it is all put together, and I think it's so beautiful. I think that mustard yellow golden color is perfect for this project. For this next fall DIY, I'm using these brass wreaths that I picked up from Dollar Tree, but you can get these at lots of different craft stores. I've even seen them at thrift stores from time to time. So I'm just trying to decide which size I would like to use, and I decided to go with this middle one. And again, I'm using these grasses that I collected from my front yard, along with this sorghum grass that I picked up from my local dollar store. Again, like I said, dried florals and grasses and whatnot are just on trend, and I think they're perfect for fall decor. Along with this, I'm using some raffia. So I'm going to gather some of my grasses together, and then I'm just going to try and decide the placement that I would like. You can go on the bottom as well as off to the side, and you can even go all the way around. I decided to create a nice beautiful cluster on the bottom. So I'm just going to layer my pieces of grasses together, and I'm also going to mix in some sorghum, but I end up adding that in a little bit later. So I'd like to just first off just try to decide on my placement and the size that I need. So I am going to be creating a cluster and having it fan out on both sides of the wreath. You can see how I created the two clusters, and now I'm just going to trim them down so that they fit appropriately across the bottom. I don't want it to look awkward once I place it. So I am going to continue to fill it in here with some shorter pieces of grasses in the middle. I just wanted to fill in that center bit a little bit. And then I'm going to be using some thin white floral wire. I've had this in my stash for a long time, and I'm just going to use that to twist tie around my bundle, and then I'm going to attach that onto my wire wreath form. So At this point, I realized I forgot the sorghum, so I'm just going to go back in and add some little bits. I'm just going to layer it and intermingle it amongst the grasses that I already have in place. So it was easy enough to add those in after I had all of that together, as I just used this florist wire again. It's a really thin gauged wire. Unfortunately, I can't remember the gauge of this wire since I lost the packaging, but just as long as you use a thin wire, it should work just fine. So now I am going to be creating a loose and relaxed loopy bow out of the raffia. I'm going to be using some thin strands of the raffia because I don't want it to be too bulky to distract from the beautiful grasses that we have. So again, I'm just going to use that thin florist wire that I had in my stash and tie that off, and then I'll be attaching that into the center of our grass cluster. I wanted to hide all that wiring, and this did that beautifully. So I have that all in place, and now I am going to create a hanger. Now you don't need a hanger for this, but where I'm going to be placing it, I did need one. So I just created a loop, wrapped that around the wreath form, and pulled this 2 strands through that loop and tied it off with a knot. So as I was working with this, I discovered that my cluster was quite loose, and so was my bow. So I just went ahead and added some hot glue to the back of the cluster, as well as glued the bow into place and allowed it to set. And now, as you can see, it's hanging beautifully on my door for my fall decor. Okay, so now on to a really fun and unique thrift store makeover, and it's a really simple one. I picked up these beautiful pendant lamps for $2.50 at my local thrift store, and I thought they were gorgeous, perfect fall decor. I am going to be creating a candle-like wreath out of these pipberry garlands that I picked up from Dollar Tree. You can find these at lots of different locations. I've seen them at Michael's and other craft stores as well. So I'm taking the wire pipberries, and I'm just trying to figure out roughly the size that I need to create a mini wreath. And then I'm going to wrap it amongst itself to create a nice loose wreath form. I will end up adding some more here in a bit, and I'll show you that. But first, I'm going to cut down some beautiful florals that I picked up from Dollar Tree. I love this color combination for fall this year. I think it's just gorgeous and so happy and cheery. And I also thought it went well with this lamp that I'm creating. So I'm just going to use the greenery as well, and I'm going to glue them into place onto my wreath base. I'm just using my wider snips to cut everything down to a more manageable size. So I'm adding some more of the garland to my wreath form, and again, I'm just going to loosely attach it by wrapping it around itself. I just felt like I needed a bit more of a base to work with, so I decided to add some more of these berries. So now I'm just going to go ahead and finish filling in my little wreath form. I'm also using these leaves. I thought they were a really pretty color. They had a bit of an orangish red color on the tips. And then I'm just going to glue in the flowers. By all means, if you have a candle wreath in your home already, go ahead and use something like that for a project like this. I didn't have anything like that, so I thought it would be fun to make my own. So here it is, all partially started, and then here it is all nicely filled in. I think it looks beautiful. And now I'm going to show you what to do with your pendant light. So for this project, I'm going to show you how to light it up two ways. I've got this LED candle light that I picked up from Dollar Tree. It was a nice, tall, slim one, and it fit underneath this pendant beautifully. I'll be showing you what it looks like in the dark as well. I'm also going to be using these fairy lights. I thought it would be really fun to show you another way to light it up. This one has a little puck and it fit underneath really well, but you can use any type of battery operated fairy lights that you have. You just want to place the lights inside and then put it down into the wreath. I really like the glow of this one. I think it's beautiful. Here is what that beautiful flickering candle light looks like. I think it looks beautiful as well, but I don't know, I'm kind of drawn to the fairy lights a little bit better, but I think this gives off a beautiful warm glow as well.
So for this next project, you're going to need to grab some battery operated lights. I got this one from Dollar Tree. I also am using some burnt umber craft paint. I'm giving a coat of the craft paint all over this particular battery operated light. Next, I'm going to be mixing some matte decoupage glue. You could use regular glue as well. I'm putting approximately a 1/4 cup, and then I'm going to be adding some of my burnt umber craft paint into the mix, as well as some dark walnut stain. This is a gel stain from Decor. Now, I wanted to create a nice, deep, rich color, so that's why I added those two particular mediums. I'm also adding some coffee grounds. Now, these coffee grounds are leftovers from some coffee that I had on another day, and I had allowed them to dry well. So if you're going to use some fresh coffee, then you might not need to darken up your glue as much as I did with the craft paint. This is something that you're going to have to experiment with. So once you've got a nice consistency where you've got enough coffee grounds and enough color, you're going to start to dab the glue mixture onto your candle. Now, it is going to start off milky, but it will darken as it dries. So I'm going to speed it up by using a blow dryer because I needed to add some more layers of my glue mixture onto the candle. I am creating some primitive style candles, you know, like those old rustic looking candles that you see from back in the day. So this is one coat of my glue mixture, and it definitely didn't have enough coverage. So I'm going over the entire piece again with my glue mixture. Again, I'm just going to be using a blow dryer to dry it. And I found that it took about 2, sometimes 3 coats of this glue mixture. But I'm telling you, this actually worked out really well. Experiment with how much of the paint and the coffee grounds you need to use for the look that you want to create. So now I have created a glue mixture with just my burnt umber craft paint and gel stain. There is no coffee grounds in this. I'm going over this entire candle with a coat of that glue mixture. I wanted to create a more like waxy finish, so I decided to add this glue mixture over top without the coffee. That's very important. I have to say it did definitely achieve that waxy look that I was going for. So I decided to create 2 of these pillars, and again, these are battery operated candles, And I got these again from Dollar Tree. I've got some foam chunks here, and I am just going to just remove the base and push these candles into a piece of foam. As you can see, it created an indent, and now I'm going to use a utility knife and I'm going to cut away the excess. That way here I can get that candle into the foam, and I've got a great base for me to access the battery pack still and change out the batteries and turn it off. I'm going to be placing this foam blocking candle inside a little mason jar. I'm going to be just trimming things down as needed, and I will be using some hot glue to put everything into place. I decided to create a set of 2, and that way here you can place them both on your mantle or wherever you like. I am going to be using some Spanish moss to stick in and around the foam just to hide it inside the jar. I'm just using a craft stick to push it down into place. You can use some green moss if you'd like. I thought maybe some straw would be pretty as well. Just use your imagination for some filler on this. You just again want to create a nice and fall look. I actually had originally created these candles for Christmas, but I have discovered that I actually love to use them during the fall season as well. So that's why I threw this particular DIY into the mix. I am so in love with these candles. I haven't made more since I made these particular ones. I definitely want to, but I have to say, I am blown away at how long and how well these particular treatments on these candles have held up. So now to decorate the jars, I'm using a mix of some really pretty lace that I picked up from the dollar store, as well as some jute twine. Of course, decorate your candles any way that you'd like. Once they are all decorated the way you like, you can put the candles into place. Next, I'm going to show you the same technique on these larger LED battery operated pillars. Again, these are from Dollar Tree. I'm going to just add to my mixture here. I needed to darken it up a little bit. I did want a bit more of a darker look. Here I'm adding some artist acrylic paint. I had a darker color. I just felt like the pillars weren't quite dark enough for what I wanted. So I decided to go ahead and add some more paint to this mix. Again, just gonna dab it onto the candle. Same technique as before, layering and then sealing, and you can see the beautiful texture that you end up getting. So to decorate these ones, I am going to use some coffee dyed cheesecloth and jute twine, also some coffee dyed cotton fabric. Now remember, I did originally decorate these for Christmas time, but I'm going to be showing you in the next little clip here how you can make some little changes or even just use these as is for your fall decor. They are very universal. So I like to just crunch up my fabrics. I just find that just creates a bit more of a relaxed look. And I'm wrapping the cheesecloth around the middle of my pillar. And I'm just going to be using some hot glue to adhere everything into place. I'm adding some jute twine. I just wanted to just casually wrap it around the center of the cheesecloth, just overlapping my wraps of twine. And I'm just gonna create just a simple knot. I have some simple little branches here that I am going to glue into place. I also have some faux greenery, and I also have some pine cones that I had foraged as well. Some faux or preserved fall leaves would be really nice, some acorns. Just think about all those natural elements that you see in the fall season that would make some nice decorative elements for candles such as these. So in the next clip, I will be showing you how I put these candles to use in my fall decor. So I have this beautiful green ticking fabric. I received it from burlapfabric.com. I'm going to have the link for you down in the description box. I wanted to make a tablecloth, so I put it in the wash and in the dryer because I needed to pre-shrink it. Next, I draped it over my table, and as you can see, I had folded it. I figured that would be the easiest way for me to measure what length I needed. So I have all the excess draped off to one side, and then I take my scissors and trim off the excess. I trimmed off this excess edge as well. It has just the little symbols and the cotton symbol. I didn't need that part. And then I am also left with this remnant here, which we will be doing something with. So I threw it back into the wash, all of that fabric, and in the dryer because I wanted to create a frayed edge, and I thought this would be the perfect way to achieve that, and it worked really well. So it loosened up a bunch of the excess thread, and as you can see, there is a lot of fraying here, but I really wanted to go for a rustic, country, casual look for my table for this fall or Thanksgiving, and I thought this would be a really fun project to try out. So I trimmed off all that loose thread and it revealed this beautiful fringe. And then to prevent it from fraying any further, I did a basic straight stitch using my sewing machine and a really tight stitch line. I just did a straight stitch, and you guys, I am not good at sewing, I'll tell you that right now, but I did manage to accomplish exactly what I needed. I just did the two ends. I didn't do the long side. I knew that those ends or the sides would not fray. Next, you want to make sure you iron it, and then you can lay it out on your table to make sure it fits. So for this next part, I received this linen table runner. It's beautiful. It's already got the frayed edge, but it was too long for my table. So same thing, I just draped it over. I put it over the tablecloth and I matched up the end of the table runner on one side with my tablecloth, just as you see right here. And then over on the other side, I allowed the excess to pull up on the chair. And then that allowed me to create a cut line so I knew exactly where to cut it. Then I created a crease just by folding it at the cut line. And then you can just go in and remove the excess threading to create, again, a frayed edge. Now, Burlap Fabric has got a ton of products. You'll definitely want to check it out if you are in the market for some trims or fabrics of all different kinds. So once you've got your table runner all ironed, you can place it on top of your table. And now I am going to start to create all the accessories that I need for my tablescape. I wanted to create some primitive farmhouse style mini pumpkins, so I am just using some plates and I'm tracing it over top of this excess fabric. It's the green ticking fabric. The green ticking fabric was placed upside down, and I did a total of 3 circles and I did a couple of different sizes. You won't see the pencil line once you're finished, as that's going to be on the inside of our pumpkin. So once you've got your templates all traced out, you can then take your scissors and cut your circles out. So here they are, all ready to go. I wanted to create that really grungy primitive look. I just love that look, and I knew the best way to do that was to coffee dye my fabric. Now you can skip this step if you don't like that look, that's completely fine, but I love it, so I thought I'd just give it a whirl and see how well this fabric takes to the dye. So I just used some instant coffee that I picked up from Dollar Tree, mixed it with some boiling water. It was about 2 tablespoons or so with about 1 cup of water. So now I'm just going to soak my fabric rounds in the coffee solution. And then as you can see, I've got a cookie sheet here, and I'm going to be laying those pieces out flat onto the cookie sheet. So my fabrics are all ready to go. I like to dry them in the oven, but you can let them air dry. In the oven, they create a really interesting texture, as you can see. I think it gives it a really grungy look. The one didn't have enough staining on one side, so I added some more coffee, put it back in the oven, and you can see the texture that it created right here. You can see how unique each of these fabric rounds is. I just love that. I think it's so cool. So they did get rather stiff, so I just like to crumple them up in my hands. That way it makes it so it's a lot more pliable and easier to use. Of course, if you didn't dye your fabric, you won't have to do this step. Okay, so for this next step, you're going to need some crochet thread as well as a tapestry needle. Mine's blunt on one end and the hole is big enough that I can thread this string through the eye. You'll just want to trim off a long strand and then of course put it onto your needle. And then I always like to tie a knot on one end that will prevent the thread from pulling through your fabric. So I'm going to be doing a running stitch. It's a very basic stitch here. I'm going to go all the way around the edge of our fabric. So I always like to start my stitching on the inside, and I always like to finish it off on the inside. That way here, when you do go to tie it up, the knot will be on the inside of the pouch. So once you reach all the way around, you can just kind of straighten everything up a bit, but you want to leave your pouch open. Now this is something I like to do. I like to add a few pebbles to the bottom. You could use something else if you prefer, but this is what I like to use. That just provides just a little bit of weight so it sits nicely on the surface that you choose. You're gonna want to fill it up with some fiberfill. I'm just using some pillows that I have picked up from Walmart. They're $4 or $5. It's a cheap way of getting some fiberfill. You want to fill that up and then pull your strings tight. So you want to make sure the hole is left open just slightly, and then you want to tie that off. I always like to do a triple knot. All right, so now it's time to start decorating our little pumpkin. I have these branches that I had picked up from the dollar store. You can pick them from the forest as well. Just some random leaves that I had in my stash, and I'm gonna be using some Spanish moss. I got this idea from Country Charm by Tracy here on YouTube. Thank you for this idea, Tracy. I love the look. It's perfect for that primitive country look that I like. So I just want to make sure that my stem is going to fit in the hole of my pumpkin, and then I'm going to add some glue and press the stem down into place in the middle of this little poof. Next, I'm going to add my leaves. Now I have 2 sizes here, and these are actually left over from faux florals that I had in my stash. I keep stuff like this because I use them a lot for projects like this. It's just a great way to repurpose these little leaves. So I just trim them down, and then I'm going to glue them into place. And as you can see, I'm using 2 different sizes just for some interest to the piece. All right, so now I'm going to add that Spanish moss that Tracy uses in her projects. So I'm just adding some glue at the base of the stem, and I'm going to wrap the Spanish moss around it. I figured this would be a great alternative to tendrils that you would find on pumpkins. I think it looks really, really neat. Just want to trim down the excess, and then I decided to add just a few pieces of the Spanish moss underneath the leaves. But of course, this is optional. You could even add some florals, pine cones, whatever you like to decorate your pumpkins. All right, so here is some trim that's linen and cotton, again from burlapfabric.com, as well as this burlap trim. Just beautiful things. I got these Dollar Tree battery operated lights, and I'm going to create a band to wrap around the middle of each of these lights, or each of these candles. I'm just going to trim it down to size and then add just a bead of glue and then just press the two ends into place. So I like to be able to reuse these candles, so I didn't glue directly onto the candle. All right, so for that nature touch that I always love to add to my projects, I decided to dig out my stash of branches, and I'm going to add them all the way around this candle. I think it'll create a really beautiful rustic country look, and I'm just adding these branches by putting hot glue directly onto the burlap trim, and then just press them into place and hold them there until the glue sets. I like to trim off the base as I go along, and then you can see how beautiful that looks, but I still have some blank spaces, so I'm just going in and adding a few extra branches here and there, and that also adds to the texture of the piece as well. All right, so I'm going to use this beautiful green trim. It's gorgeous. I just wrapped a piece around, and I'm just going to tie a simple knot. You could do a bow if you prefer, but I just like the simple look of the knot. I'm going to tie that off, and then I am going to trim the ends by creating a dovetail. So for this next one, I'm doing something different. I have not seen this done before. I went and collected some grasses from my front yard, and just like with the branches, I'm going to glue these grasses all the way around the candle. So I'm just adding a tiny bead of the glue. I don't want too much because these grasses are delicate. So you want to press it into place. I'm also going to be using the bottom part of the stem of these grasses, and I'll just go all the way around. I don't create a super full look. I just wanted it to look light and airy and wispy, and so I just went ahead and just continued to add it. You can add anything you want to these candles. I have done this with birch bark, with feathers, even with dried florals. Okay, I have to say, I think this looks pretty cool. So if you have any loose pieces, go ahead and add just a tiny bit more glue and press those pieces into place. The burlap might slip up on your candle a little bit. You can just push it down into place, and then again trim off the bottom. Now I'm going to be using this cream colored trim. Again, it's the linen and cotton. I'm going to just wrap it around again and just do that simple basic knot and the dovetail trim on the ends. Okay, so I decided that I just want to keep these next couple of candles really basic. So I'm just going to wrap this one with the green, and then I do one with the cream, and just do the basic knot, just like you see right here. Again, if you choose, you can definitely do a bow. All right, so now it's time to gather up all your other supplies. I'm using some burlap leaves I got from Dollar Tree, these napkins from Superstore, some sheet music that I had in my stash, these beautiful fabric pumpkins that we created, as well as these primitive candles that I had made a while back. I'll have the link for you down in the description and pinned in the comments. So I have my fabrics layered on the table already. And now I'm going to be using this wood platform that I had bought recently. I'm going to just start to layer my pieces in. I've got amber glass that are filled with grasses and branches and all the different candles that we had decorated. And then I am also going to just tuck the fabric pumpkins in here and there as well. So I know not everybody's going to have a wood platform like this, so I'm going to be sharing another option on how you can decorate your table as well. So I just felt like something was missing, so that is why I decided to use these burlap leaves. I just felt like all these pieces needed a base to sit on besides just the wood platform that I have here. So I'm just picking the items up, as you can see, and I'm just tucking them in underneath. Of course, you can use anything that you have in your stash. So I've done this before. I've used sheet music as a placemat. I always thought it was something fun to do. Just using my basic white dishes and some wine glasses that I had. And for the napkin, I'm just folding it in half and placing it on top of the plate. I love the pattern that it has, but of course, use any napkins that you have. So for another added touch, I just have a piece of grass that I had picked from the front yard and put it on top. I love that look. I think that everything that came together here is fairly simple and so rustic and primitive looking, and definitely has that fall vibe that I was going for. So I'm going to show you the second option. I had a remnant of the table runner and I thought it would be really cool just to use that as a simple centerpiece. I decided that I wanted to create this fall stamp pattern. So use any fall stamps that you have in your stash. And I'm going to be using this archival ink in the potting soil cover. Potting soil color. So the archival ink is a permanent ink, so this will be washable. So I'm just going to stamp the pattern along the edge. Love how that looks. It's not perfect, but that is exactly what I was going for. I think if you just randomly place it and if it isn't a perfect imprint, it just has that real rustic look. So this is permanent ink, so you want to make sure you protect your surface while you are working. Isn't this beautiful? I love how that turned out. So again, now we can start to layer all our pieces onto the table. I've decided that I am going to use some branches by just laying them out down the center. This is something I absolutely love to do. I go foraging or collect things on my walks. I had this leaf garland in my stash. I'm going to lay that out, and then I'm going to just lift and tuck the branches in throughout the garland. I got this particular garland at Dollarama here in Canada, but of course feel free to use anything from any of your local stores. All right, so now we're just going to start to add all those decorative elements. Again, we've got the vases and the candles with the grasses and the branches and all those other candles that we had created. Just layering things and adding things like this is so easy to do to create a beautiful Thanksgiving or fall table centerpiece. I have to say, I really like this look as well. They both turned out beautiful. I'm going to show you what they look like in the dark. Here, the night is starting to fall and it just has such a warm and cozy feeling to it. I am really enjoying this look. This has got such a nice warm glow in the evening. So cozy, perfect for those chilly evenings in the fall.
Okay, so here I have a piece of cardboard that's 1.5 inches wide and some yarn. Cut a small piece, and I'm also going to be wrapping the yarn around the cardboard 40 to 50 times. I cut it, pull it off, and then I'm going to tie off in the middle with that extra piece of yarn. Pull tight. Cut through all the loops that you have created. Now I'm going to fluff up all the pieces, and I am going to give it a bit of a haircut so I can make a nice round pom-pom. I have this branch that I found out on a nature walk, and I'm going to add a little touch of hot glue to my pom-pom and add it to the top of my branch. And there you have a pom-pom flower. Next, I have another branch and some yarn, and I am going to tie the yarn onto the branch and add just a dab of glue. Now I'm going to start wrapping my branch with the yarn, and I'm going to make sure that there's no gaps in between each of the wraps. Once the stick is wrapped the way you like, tie off your yarn, add a dab of glue, and then trim off any of the loose ends. Okay, so for my next project, I am taking 3 long lengths of yarn, and I'm going to tie them off in a knot on one end. I'm going to place that knot in a clipboard, and now I am going to start to braid the pieces together. Once you have your desired length, tie it off on the other end with a knot. Now I have a cylinder vase, some 8.5 by 14 copy paper, and a tape runner. I'm going to wrap my vase in the copy paper. This way here I can use the vase for another project if I desire. Adding a touch of glue runner to one end of the tape, and then I'm going to wrap up the vase. I have an assorted color mix of braided yarn, and I am going to start to apply it to the paper on the vase. I'm going to snip off one end of the knot, and I'm going to add a dab of glue to my vase on the paper, and I'm going to make sure that those loose ends are adhered well to that paper so it doesn't unravel. Next, you will add a bead of the hot glue onto the paper and start to apply the braided yarn onto and around the vase.
To end that braided strand, you just snip it off and do the same thing by adding some glue and making sure that those end strands are secured to the paper that's around the vase. And then you can go ahead and add some different texture. I've got this chunky yarn that I'm going to add, and you just continue to add layers of your braided yarn or any other yarn that you have around your vase. I'm wrapping the yarn around until all the paper is covered up. You can use any colors you'd like, and it gives a nice woven look for your vase. Okay, I have a bonus for you, just something quick and easy to do. Find some nice smooth rocks, and again, your yarn, and wrap it around your rock. Add a touch of glue on the back, start to wrap, add another touch of glue, and you're done. Here's how all my projects look together. This is a great way to use up your yarn stash. I had picked up this clear owl jar from my local dollar store, and I thought it would be perfect for the fall season. I am going to be giving it a coat of some Whisper chalk paint by Decor. It was my absolutely most favorite chalk paint that Decor has. So I'm going to give the glass jar a cleaning using some rubbing alcohol, and I'm just using a cotton swab. That way here I know that the paint is going to stick to this glass really well. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean it up, and then once you're done that, you are ready to start painting this with your chalk paint. So I am going to just start off with one layer. I am using a soft bristle brush, and it does take, I believe, about 3 coats of the paint. You want to make sure you allow the chalk paint to dry well in between each coat. I'm now going to go in with my second layer of paint, and this time around I'm adding a little bit of a thicker layer of the paint, and I am amazed at how well chalk paint sticks to glass. It's just awesome. So I'm going to allow that to dry, and then again, if you feel like you need to apply a 3rd coat of paint, then please by all means do so. So once my 3rd coat, yes, I ended up using 3 coats of the paint, I then am going to go in with a sanding block, and I'm just going to sand off some of the paint to allow for some of the texture to show through. If you don't want to do this step, then you can definitely just go in and add some distress gel, but I thought that the texture on the jar would show up so much better if I went ahead and did some sanding, as you can see right here. I used a nice soft cloth to remove any of the dust, and at this point you could use a nice clear wax to seal it all up. I didn't have any on hand, so you could just use a nice clear varnish and that will help to seal it all up. I added a nice battery operated light inside and it gave a nice warm glow, or you could use it as a vase. So for my first fall DIY, I have some chalk paint and this candlestick from Dollar Tree. I am going to give the candlestick 2 coats of the chalk paint and allow it to dry well in between coats. Once the candlestick is all dry, I'm taking a sanding block and I'm distressing the edges. I am going for a rustic farmhouse look for my fall decor, and I really love the way a little distressing on chalk paint looks. If you're new, I want to say welcome, and I'd love for you to join my community by tapping on the subscribe button as well as the bell to keep up to date with everything I have to share. Once you've achieved the desired look, take a rag and remove all the dust. So now I am going to be using some dark walnut stain, and I'm applying it with a rag, and I'm going all over the surface of the candlestick. I love doing this technique to get a really nice rustic farmhouse look. I love the way it makes it look old and aged, and I am just going to rub it all over, and I'm also going to get it into the crevices. You could leave the candlestick just as is before you stained it, but again, I am going for the rustic farmhouse look. Once you've achieved the desired look, you're going to allow this to dry well. For my next DIY, I have this picture frame from Dollar Tree. I'm removing all the brackets and the glass, and I'm setting that all aside. And again, using my favorite chalk paint, I am going to give the picture frame 2 coats of the paint. Again, allow to dry well in between. I again am going for that rustic farmhouse for my fall decor on this piece as well. And I am going to add the walnut stain to this as well. It gives it a bit of a wood look, and I really like how it is looking on this frame. Again, once you have the desired look, you're going to set it aside and allow it to dry well. Once dry, you can place the clean glass back into the frame and add the backing and then flip it back over. Okay, so I have these removable wall stickers. Again, I got them from Dollar Tree, and I am going to use the word thankful and just place it right on top of the glass. So we have all seen these glass candles in Dollar Tree, and I am just going to decorate it for my fall decor. I have this cut out leaf, and I will share the tutorial on how I did that down in my description box below. Just using a glue stick that I picked up from Dollar Tree and attaching it to the glass candle. I am going to be using this golden yellow jute twine, and I'm going to wrap it around and tie it in place. I'm using another long strand, and I am going to wrap that around the top of the candle just to give it a little bit more interest. I just like to tie a simple knot. Feel free to tie a bow if you choose. going to add these really pretty wood leaf embellishments that I got from my stash, and I'm staining them with a golden yellow ink pad. I really like that look. And then I'm going to glue them to the ends of the string. I do end up moving the leaf up higher onto the string. Just use your own judgment on how you want to place the embellishments. Here you can see how I've just adjusted the height of that embellishment on the string. And now for my fourth DIY, I have these beautiful leaf lights from Dollar Tree. I am going to give each leaf 2 coats of my favorite chalk paint. I didn't want them to just look like a piece of plastic while they are on display, not lit up. So I am going to cover them up with chalk paint and just kind of give them a bit of dimension. Just a little tip, to paint these, I gather them in my hand as you see here, and I paint each leaf one at a time. And once you are completed one leaf, you drop that one down and then move on to the next one. I do allow these to hang to dry, and I did give them 2 coats of the paint. Now for a little dimension, I am going to add my golden yellow ink pad to the tips of the leaf, and I love how this turned out. It is so pretty in my fall decor, and I just love the simplicity of these. And here are those beautiful leaf lights all lit up. I really like how this looks, and they even look beautiful when they're not all lit up. I love the simplicity of how my candle turned out. I like the little rustic touches that it has and the natural elements that it has. It's perfect for my Thanksgiving fall decor. And I am absolutely loving this candlestick now. It looks very vintage and rustic, and it looks great with the glass candle. And this little sign here is the perfect addition for my Thanksgiving fall decor. I love the simplicity of it, and I love how the lights shimmer all around. I would love to know which is your favorite. Today I am sharing with you how to put together a vintage farmhouse look for your table for the Thanksgiving season. So I am going to start off by using some paper doilies. I don't have any chargers, so I decided to tea dye some of these doilies. I preheated my oven to 250 degrees and steeped some green tea. I lay my doilies out onto a cookie tray, and once my tea is steeped enough, I then drizzle some of the tea over top of the doilies. I then take some doilies and layer them on top of each other and continue to add some tea on top. If you're new, I want to say welcome, and I'd love for you to join my community by tapping on the subscribe button as well as the bell to keep up to date with everything I have to share. Drain off any of the excess tea and then place the cookie sheet into the oven. Now just keep an eye on them as they do dry quickly. I pull them out of the oven and I decided to add some more tea, but first I pull the layers of the doilies apart, and the ones that were on the top I am now going to place on the bottom. And then I'm going to just continue to do that and add some more tea. I just want a little bit more of a darker stain. And again, drain off the excess fluid and place it back into the oven. Once dry, you can remove them from the cookie sheet and set them aside. I love the way these have turned out. It's a great alternative if you yourself don't have any chargers. For my next DIY, I have got these old book pages and I am going to lay them out down the center of my table. There's about 3 different shades of some vintage color. It is perfect for a vintage farmhouse look. So I'm just going to randomly place them on top of each other and underneath. And then I have this lace crochet doily that I'm laying over top. And I'm just using that to measure out the right length for my book pages. And you can see I'm just rearranging things. Once I have the correct placement, I then take my glue stick and start to glue the pages together. I'm just lifting up a corner, adding a touch of glue, and then pressing down. I am going to do this while all the book pages are in place on the table, so I have the correct placement. Once you're done gluing your sheets of paper together, you can then put the crochet doily runner on top, and there you have a gorgeous vintage farmhouse table runner for your Thanksgiving decor. So now I'm going to show you how I'm putting my table setting together. I am placing my tea-stained doily down and this beautiful vintage plate and this beautiful napkin I received from a friend. The dishes are from my husband's Oma. I always love to add a touch of nature to my decor, so I put a piece of grass from my garden there. The cutlery is from when my husband and I got married, and the stemware is from my mom. I love how the place setting turned out. It definitely looks like a vintage farmhouse. Here is the stamp on the back of those dishes that I showed you, and this is a close-up of the pattern. It's very, very pretty. So now for my next project, I have this bread bowl that I was gifted, and I filled it with some natural excelsior. I placed the bread bowl in the middle on my table runner, and I dug into my stash of florals, and I am going to start to place them into the excelsior. I'm not gluing anything into place. I'm just laying them within, randomly placing my flowers. I have a nice stash of some full flowers and some fruits, and I use these time and time again. I'm able to do that because I don't typically glue all my pieces together. And if you buy high quality stuff, you can use all these products for years to come. So I like to add some different colors and textures that just gives your centerpiece a lot of different interest and look. Just use whatever you have on hand. Everything that you've been seeing is stuff that I've had in my home, in my stash. So those of you who follow me know that I love to add a touch of nature to my decor. So I went and snipped these dry flower pods from my front yard. This is a close-up of them. I love the colors and the texture. I just think it really adds some unique interest to the centerpiece. I love how the centerpiece turned out. It looks very rustic and vintage, perfect for the fall season, and it's gonna look great on the table for Thanksgiving. And I'm so pleased with how the place settings turned out. These dishes from my husband's Oma were the perfect addition to this Thanksgiving vintage farmhouse look that I was going for. And I am definitely going to be doing this table runner again. I absolutely love how it turned out. DIY, you're going to need an artist panel that is made out of wood, and this one is 12 by 16. I was inspired by this piece that I saw on Zulily. It's from the Kendrick Home collection, and I just fell in love with it, and I knew that I could recreate this in my own style, so I'm going to be creating a fall look for less. I flipped my panel upside down, and I'm going to give the frame a coat of this walnut gel stain I got from Decor, and I'm going to be using a makeup sponge to apply this stain. So I got my wood panel from a store called Dollarama. I have seen these in some other stores as well. You can also purchase them online. So I'm going to give the entire frame portion a coat of the walnut stain and allow it to dry. Next, I'm going to be using some painter's tape, and I'm butting it right up against the edge of the frame and pressing it up. I wanted to protect the stain coverage that I did, as I'm going to be painting the inside of our wood panel with some paint. Once your painter's tape is all in place, you can then apply your craft paint. So I'm using this dark gray that I picked up from Michael's, and it's the same shade as seen in our inspiration piece. So I'm going to give 2 to 3 coats of this paint and allow it to dry well. So this is the first coat of paint. I am going to go in with a larger brush and apply some more paint, and I'm going to apply the paint in longer, smoother strokes and then allow it to dry. Once our canvas board is all painted and stained, you can then add your hanger. I am finding the center here, which is 6 inches, and then I am going to be placing my hanger right into the frame. My frame is about 1 centimeter thick, and I just wanted to make sure that my nails go into that part, and then it's ready to be hung on the wall if you desire. So I wanted to create that matte look that was in our original inspiration piece. So it was kind of a bit more, I'd say, like a satin or an eggshell kind of a look. So I knew that I could achieve that look using some decoupage glue. So I'm just applying it with some paint with a paintbrush, and then I'm going to be taking a plastic card and smoothing it out just so I don't have too thick of a layer. Allow that to dry well, and then you can move on to the next step. I went into Cricut Design Space and I uploaded an image that I had that I wanted to use. I removed all the line work, and that left me with this silhouette. And I loved how this looked. It reminded me of seed pods. In the inspiration piece, I had a flower, and I didn't quite think that it looked kind of fall-like. So now I sent my image to my Cricut Joy machine, and I'm cutting it out on some matte white permanent vinyl. I'll, of course, remove this vinyl from my mat, and then using some transfer tape, I'm figuring out the placement first, flip it back over so that the sticky side is down, and then burnish my vinyl onto my board. Now, I haven't done too much vinyl work, and I did not burnish my piece well enough, so it did start to lift in spots, but of course you can just go back in and burnish it some more until it stays. Once your image is in place, you can remove the transfer tape and it's ready to be hung on your wall. I love this. This is something I was so excited to try, and I'm so pleased with how well it turned out. Perfect for a modern farmhouse look. For our next DIY, I am using this styrofoam pumpkin that I picked up from Dollar Tree last year. I removed the stem and I'm just creating a larger hole at the top. So this is the inspiration piece. I found a bark covered pumpkin at Wayfair and it was $37.99. And of course I knew I could recreate this as I love to forage birch bark. So I dove into my stash. But first I needed to give this pumpkin a coat of just some cream paint. You could use white as well. I didn't want the orange to really stand out. And I gave this pumpkin 2 coats of my paint. Once our pumpkin is all nice and dry, it is time to add the birch bark. So I'm using some thinner pieces that I had torn off of my larger pieces that I had in my stash. This is birch bark that I had foraged from the forest last year. I left it in longer strips just to make it easier to cover the pumpkin. So I'm using some hot glue to apply the pieces of birch bark onto the surface. And the hot glue did not melt my styrofoam, which was awesome. So you can also apply the glue straight onto the pumpkin and then apply your birch bark. I found that using the longer strips of birch bark also made it easier and faster to cover the piece. So if you look at our inspiration piece, you could see that they used a lot of small and textural pieces. So once I had my pumpkin covered, I started to add some small pieces that had lots of texture on them, as you can see here. And then that gave it more of the look that we were going for off of our inspiration piece. So now I'm just going to add some thinner pieces of birch bark to the bottom. You could also use a piece of felt or a fabric, use whatever you desire. I had these nice thin pieces, so that's what I chose to use. So now it's time to decorate the top. I am going to be using a larger stem piece that I had in my stash. I picked it up from a dollar store. I have some pine cones again from my stash. I'm adding a little bit of Spanish moss and I'm using some florist wire and brown florist tape to create my tendrils. So you want to wrap the wire with the tape and you want to twist and allow the heat from your fingers to melt the wax that's on the tape, and that allows it to hold together. You're also pulling on it gently and twisting at the same time. Once you have it covered, you'll then cut your wire into 3 pieces and then you can use that for tendrils. I like to create tendrils by wrapping the wire around a pencil, as seen here. Make sure you leave a straight edge to apply it to your project. So I am using some Spanish moss just to cover up some of the mechanics you see there on the top of my pumpkin. And I just really like that rustic look that Spanish moss gives. And it also just adds a little bit more of a high-end look. So once that's in place, you can then add your stem, generously apply some hot glue to the bottom and put the stem into place. Now I'm going to add the pine cones that I had. Again, that was what was in our inspiration piece. You could add anything you like. I already had these pine cones, so I really like that look. And then I'm also going to add my tendrils. Again, just use some hot glue on the stem and push them into place. Once you have your tendrils all put into place, it is ready to display on a shelf. I absolutely love how this turned out. I love the rustic high-end look that this has. Perfect for that rustic farmhouse look that I absolutely love. I'm going to be using this wood pumpkin, and I've got mine from Dollarama. You can pick them up at Dollar Tree as well. And you'll also need an old sweater. You can use any kind of sweater you like. I really like this one because of the colors and the pattern. You'll want to flip the sweater upside down and then figure out which way you want to use your panel. Now, as you can see, I had done some experimenting on this pumpkin panel already, and I wanted to cover that up. So I'm placing the two wrong sides together, and then using a Sharpie, I am going to outline around my pumpkin, and then that will give me a guide as to what I need to cut out. So I'm using my good fabric scissors and I'm cutting around my outline, and as you can see there, I am cutting out about a centimeter away from my outline that I drew. That would give me a little bit of wiggle room if I make a mistake or anything. Save that sweater for some other projects. I'm going to place my sweater over top of the pumpkin panel that I wanted to cover up, and then I'm going to attach this using some hot glue. Now you could use some wet glue. Tacky glue would actually work really well, but I just wanted to be quick about this, so I'm using my hot glue. So I'm just going around the edge and then I'm patting down my sweater into the glue. I'm just going to reach inside here with my glue gun and attach a little bit of hot glue, and that'll prevent the sweater from slipping, and then continue to glue down my edges. Once the sweater is glued into place, you can then trim off the excess. Now I should have done this step before I put the sweater on, but I just wasn't thinking about this. So I am applying some gel walnut stain put out by Decor, and I'm applying it to the stem and the edges of my pumpkin wood panel. And it would have been easier if I did that before I applied the sweater, but yeah, sometimes we make those mistakes. So I'm using a makeup sponge to apply the paint or the stain to the edge of our pumpkin and allow it to dry. So I noticed that some of my edges were lifting, so I'm just going to go in with my glue gun and just pat those down just to make sure they stay in place and my sweater doesn't fray. So you could leave the pumpkin stem as is, but I love to add a touch of nature, and I decided to cover up my stem with some birch bark. I'm just going to trim it down, and then using some hot glue, I am going to attach my birch bark pieces to the stem. You will want to press and hold the birch bark till the glue sets. Once your bark is in place, you can then trim off the excess. I like to use some wire cutters as it cuts through the bark really, really well. And I'm just going to remove all those extra bits. I really like that rustic look the bark gives. So now I need to add a hanger. I am going to use some jute twine, and I'm just forming a loop, tying a knot, and then I'm going to add some glue to the hole and then press my knot into that hole. That will help really secure our hanger into place. And just as an added touch, I am adding some hot glue over the twine and then just spreading that glue out, and that'll really help hold everything in place. Now it's time to decorate. I am again using that really nice jute twine, and I'm just making a really relaxed loopy bow and adding some extra tails. Using a wire, I'm going to just use it like a twist tie and just bend the wire down just so it doesn't poke out, and it allows it to sit flatter on the surface. Here I have some leaves from my stash. I'm going to glue those into place. I also have a pine cone and some tendrils, and I'm just going to layer everything at the base of our stem just to help hide the seam as well as give it a nice decorative touch. Some paper flowers would be really pretty for this project as well, and you can use just anything you'd like to suit your home decor. Once you have all your decorative elements in place, it is then time to hang it on your wall. I think this is such a beautiful and cozy look for the fall season. I'm really happy with how well this turned out. For our next sweater project, you're going to need 3 cylinder vases in different sizes, and you will need some sleeves from some old sweaters. Now, this is a project I've seen done lots, but I wanted to just share my little flair that I like to do. So I'm just cutting some sleeves off of 3 different types of sweaters. And then I am going to figure out which sweater I want to place on which vase, and I'm going to slip these sleeves over top of the vases. Now, I really liked this brown one, and it's got a nice thick and chunky cuff. I'm just folding that over, and then I'm going to trim off the excess on the bottom of the vase. So for a little bit of a different look, I am going to have the cuff of this particular sweater sleeve on the bottom. And then I'm going to trim off just some of the excess. I'm going to tuck the extra bit on the inside of this vase, and then I'm going to glue it into place using my hot glue gun. This will just give a bit of a different look from the other one, and I really like how this one turned out. So I've decided to go in and add a touch of hot glue to the bottom of the brown sweater vase, and that'll help just hold that sweater sleeve into place. Again, just trim off the excess and then it will sit flat on your surface. So for the fall season, I have actually really liked gray mixed with some beige and brown and a few other colors, and I thought this sweater sleeve would be great. It's also a nice thin one, and I like the little dots that are on the pattern. I'm just going to again roll over the cuff and then trim off the excess and glue into place if you feel it's needed. So our vases are all covered with the sweaters, and now it's time to fill them. I have these beautiful feathers that have got that nice brown and beige color, and I extended the stems by adding some twigs. I loved these golden yellow florals that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and I'm also going to use that branch that I foraged from a nature walk, and I'm just going to add these to the gray vase. I thought the contrast of the golden yellow with the gray was so beautiful. And now I've got these gorgeous cotton stems again that I picked up from Dollar Tree. They're just so beautiful. I added those to the brown vase, and then I'm going to go in with these branches and add them to the cotton stems. As you can see, there's a really pretty golden yellow lichen that matches my florals. Everything here ties together really well, and I love this natural rustic look. Here they are all put together with some other natural elements that I had in my home. I really like the cozy look that these vases give to my fall decor. For this next DIY, you'll need a styrofoam wreath and some scraps of your sweater pieces. I'm using the scraps that are left from my projects that I've done already, and I'm going to cut them down into pieces that are size that you need to wrap around our wreath. Now this project is inspired by something that I had seen on Pinterest, but I wanted to give it my own unique spin. So once you have your sweater pieces all cut down, you can start to glue these sweater pieces onto our wreath form using some hot glue. I am choosing which side I want to be my back, and that's where you're going to have the seams for your sweater pieces as shown. So just continue to use some hot glue. We will actually use quite a bit, and then you will just continue to add your pieces. So as you can see here, I've left a gap between my gray and beige sweater pieces as I am going to be adding something different in those spots. Continue to layer and add all the different textures and patterns and colors of your sweaters until you have the coverage that you like. Okay, so now the touch that I am really excited about, and that is adding some birch bark. I have some thinner pieces of birch bark, again, that I've foraged, and I am going to glue these into place in those spots that I left blank. So I'm using quite a bit of hot glue and I'm pressing and holding it in place. And then I am going to actually use some jute twine to help hold my glue in place till it sets. So I covered each of my section with the birch bark and the glue has all set. So I'm going to trim off that jute twine that I used to help set the glue. You could leave that in place if you want, but I didn't want that. I'm actually going to be using something different. But before I show you that, I decided that I'm going to go in and add just a bit more texture to my piece by adding some pieces of my birch bark that have a bit more of a rustic look and have a lot more texture. I'm going to glue them into place, and then I'm just going to help to hold it till set. These pieces of birch bark are actually quite thin, so I didn't have to hold on to them for very long. Once I have all that decorated, I am then going to use some chunky yarn that matches my wreath. I'm going to tie it on with a knot, as you can see here, and then I'm going to wrap around my wreath very sporadically, but I'm going to make sure I do get it somewhat tight. This is going to help hold my sweater pieces and my birch bark into place, as well as give it more texture. Once I get all the way around, I am then going to tie it off in a knot on the back side of the wreath. I'm going ahead and doing the same with this brown chunky yarn that I had. It looks really good with the brown sweater that I used, and again the same thing, just wrapping it sporadically. I decided not to use the cream chunky yarn as it kind of conflicted with the birch bark. So here I figured out where the top of my wreath is going to be, and then using a thick gauged florist wire, I am creating a hook. I'm just bending my two pieces on the side, and then I'm going to poke it through the sweater into my wreath, and then bend it up and add a dab of hot glue to help hold that into place. And there, our wreath is ready to be hung. I think it turned out so well. I love all the textural elements in this piece. Definitely has that rustic cozy look that I wanted for my fall decor. I wanted to create something really fun for my fall decor. So I had this picture frame from Dollar Tree. And I'm going to remove some of the parts and just remove any of the smudge marks that may be on the glass. And then I am going to be filling up one portion of it using some thin pieces of birch bark. I love to add nature into my crafts whenever I can, so I thought this would be perfect to try and use for this project. So I have sandwiched the birch bark between two pieces of glass. This time I'm using some champagne gold metallic smart vinyl in permanent. It's beautiful color. So again, you're going to be following all the prompts on the screen of your device, and this time I have typed out "Hello Fall." So the Cricut Joy is done cutting out my "Hello Fall" words, and I'm going to follow all the same procedures I did before for the tumbler. I absolutely love how this piece turned out. I love how rustic it is and how easy it was. It's a great project for anybody to do. I'm going to share how I transform this old picture frame with the glass still in. Hey everyone, so I am going to take the backing out of this frame as well as the glass, and then I'm going to take it outside and I'm going to spray paint it with the Heirloom White Satin Rust-Oleum spray paint. And then I'm going to take some sandpaper and just kind of go over it lightly just to distress the frame once it's painted. Okay, so I'm going to clean this glass just to prepare the surface. I'm just using vinegar and water, and then I might go over it with some rubbing alcohol to remove any grease marks. You just want to make sure that paint will still adhere to the glass after using the glass cleaner. Careful when you're handling the glass. It has very sharp edges. Feel free to wear gloves if you'd like. I'm being very gentle with how I'm handling the glass. My glass is prepped, and the next step you could do is you could either freehand or draw on some paper first, or use a printable, whatever works for you. I'm just going to be doing a pumpkin, so I'm going to lightly trace out a pumpkin on my paper. I'm not going for perfectionism here, and just doing a quick light sketch, and then I will show you what to do next. Okay, so once you have your image, you are now going to place it underneath your glass where you'd like it situated. And then you have your template for your painting. Okay, the colors I am using are Naples Yellow Hue, Natural Gray Value 5, Unbleached Titanium, Raw Umber. And these are all acrylic paints. Paints ready on my palette. My palette is an ice cream pail lid. Water, my paint brushes. I have a round brush. I'd say this is a small to medium sized flat brush, and a large angled brush. I like to start off with my dark colors, and I'll be going over my lines. It's like tracing. I will wet my brush a bit, and I also like to keep a rag on hand so I don't get too much water. And then I might like just go with gray. And like I said, I'll go over my lines, and then you might want to go in and add some dark brown. As long as you're starting off with your darkest color, this is the color palette I'm choosing to use. Feel free to use any colors you like. I have my outline all done in my darkest color, so now I'm going to wet my flat brush, and I'm going to go in and use the Naples yellow. Okay, so my frame is all dry, and you can still see that the wood grain is showing through. Love that. And now I'm just going to go in and just kind of distress it using a sanding block. Okay, so my pumpkin is all nice and dry, and I finished distressing my picture frame. So now all you have to do is pop this inside as is. You can put a backing on if you'd like. And there you go. There's your pumpkin art on glass. You can add leaves to it if you'd like. I prefer the simplicity of this one. And you could add some words or whatever you'd like, but I really, really like how simple this is. I'm going to show you how to make some boho inspired velvet pumpkins. I'm starting off with this vintage green velvet, and I'm using a plate to cut out my template. I'm using a black marker to trace around the plate, and then I'm going to use some sharp fabric scissors to cut my circle out. Now I have some embroidery floss, and it matches my fabric along with a needle. I am going to thread my needle with the embroidery floss, then tie a knot on the one end just so that it doesn't pull through. So now you're going to just stitch along the edge of your circle, and you're just going to be doing a simple running stitch all the way around. Once you're done stitching all the way around, you'll remove the needle and then you're going to pull your two ends slightly to form a pouch. This part is optional. I like to add some pebbles to the bottom of my fabric pumpkins. That just helps the pumpkins to sit nicely on your surface. Now it's time to fill our pumpkins. I like to use some fiber fill, and I get my fiber fill from using pillows that I buy at Walmart. Once you have your pumpkin all stuffed, you're gonna pull your strings tight, then tie it off with a knot. I'm going to be using a piece of branch that I found outside, and you're going to glue this into place into the center of the pumpkin. Okay, so this part is optional. I have these gorgeous velvet leaves in my stash, and I'm just going to trim them off and hot glue them into place. Another option is to add some tendrils. I am using some florist wire and florist tape, and I am going to double wrap my wire. You're going to then cut the wire down to your desired size and then wrap it around a pen or a pencil to form a coil. Glue this into place around your stem and bend as desired. Once you're done watching my velvet pumpkin tutorial, I would love for you to pop by and check out this DIY doily pumpkin tutorial, and I will have the link to that down in my description box for you all to check out, along with some other fall DIY tutorials. Okay, so for my next velvet pumpkin, I am going big. This is a big circle. I am doing all the same procedures to create this large pumpkin. And this fabric is a lot thicker, so I am going to be making a bigger knot on the end of my thread. And that way here, it won't pull right through my fabric. As you can see, as I'm stitching the edge, I am pulling together the gathers of this fabric. And then once you get to the end, just make sure you leave enough of a space for you to put your pebbles into the base as well as the fiber fill. I am adding quite a bit of fiber fill to this pumpkin. I want this to be a really nice plush looking pumpkin. Again, once you are done filling it up, pull your strings tight. Now, because this fabric is thicker, it's not going to close up as tight as my previous one, but that's okay. I am going to be filling in that center with my stem as I will be showing. Okay, so now I am going to use something very different as the stem. I found this cylinder of birch bark out in the forest. I love to add a touch of nature to my decor and DIYs, so if that interests you, I'd love for you to check out my channel. Again, I am going to be adding these beautiful velvet leaves I had in my stash. This part is optional. Again, I am going to add my wire as the tendrils in around the stem. I absolutely love how these pumpkins turned out. I will have a playlist for you of all my other fall DIYs that I've created, along with that doily pumpkin tutorial. I have to say, Dollar Tree's LED lights are some of my favorite things to craft with. So I had decided that I wanted to cover one of these with some birch bark. You're also going to need some copy paper, and you want to use some scissors for that. I wanted to make it so I could actually glue things onto these pillar candles because they are literally covered in wax. So anything that I used using the hot glue would not stick to that wax. So here you see me covering the candle with some paper, and I'm just using some basic tape to adhere it to the candle. And that gives me a nice surface to work on. I am now going to be using some birch bark that I had foraged from the forest. If you're at all interested in seeing how I forage for birch bark, I will have a video listed down in the description box of this video below, so you can check that out, or you can check out my foraging playlist on my channel page. I am just going to be using some hot glue to adhere this. You can see I just added a little bit to the paper, and then I'm going to use just sections of birch bark to wrap around. I wanted the pieces to be rough and jagged, so I do tear them as needed. You want to just continue to add some hot glue, press the pieces into place. You also want to have all your pieces overlapping. We want to try and create a really nice and natural look around this candle. So I'm just going to continue to add some hot glue and the birch bark pieces, tear as needed, and use those textures that the birch bark has to your advantage by creating a really cool look. As I've gotten to the top, I am allowing the birch bark to peek up over the rim of the candle. That way here you're not going to see the white paper showing through. On the bottom, if there is any overhang, you'll want to trim it off. Otherwise, the candle's not going to sit nice and sturdy on your surface. So I'm just going to continue to add my birch bark until I am satisfied with the look of my piece. So in a few places here and there, I added some just single curls of the birch bark, as well as some lichen and moss that I may have had, something that you would typically see growing on a tree such as this. So again, the beauty of a candle like this is that you can use it for fall, but you can use it for Christmas as well. I am so happy with this. It has held up really well. And then to enjoy it, you just need to remove that tab for the battery, and then you can set it on your shelf and enjoy that warm glow. So for these battery operated lights, I am going with a bit more of a boho look using some feathers that I had, and I'm using some jute ribbon and some twine. Again, you're going to need your hot glue gun and some scissors. I can't get over how awesome these battery operated lights from Dollar Tree are. You can get these at other stores as well. So to start off with, I'm just adding a band of ribbon at the base of the candle. Again, this is going to give me a nice sturdy base to adhere my feathers to. Remember, these candles are covered in wax and the hot glue does not stick to that wax. So once I have a strip of the ribbon cut out to length, I am adding a bit of hot glue to that ribbon, and then I'm going to take one of my feathers and press it into place. I picked these feathers up from my local dollar store, but of course you can get these at other craft stores as well. I am just going to continue to add some hot glue and some of the feathers until I have a nice full piece. I am going to kind of overlap some of these feathers as well. You can see I have a few different textures here. I think you can get, I have seen some feathers that are orange in color if you really want a nice fall color to this piece, but I really like the neutral look of these particular feathers. So next, I am now going to wrap that ribbon with the feathers around the base of the candle, such as you see me doing here. I did leave a little bit of the end of the ribbon blank with no feathers glued because I needed to glue those two ends together. So you want to make sure you don't go right up to the end with feathers. Next, I added just a little touch of some hot glue on the end and then attached the two ends of the ribbon together so it completely wraps around the candle. Now I am going to be using my scissors and I'm going to trim off the ends of the feathers. That way here my candle will sit nice and flat on the surface. Just be careful when you're cutting them that you hold your feathers into place so they don't snap off of the ribbon. So now I've got them all trimmed up. If any of the feathers did come loose, then go ahead and add a little bit of extra hot glue as needed. You can also go in and add some extra feathers if you feel that once you wrapped this around, you have some empty spaces. I have a little bit of a space there, so I am going to go ahead and add an extra feather. So I'm really happy with how this looks. I filled it in quite a bit more. I felt like it just needed a whole lot more feathers to create the look I was going for. Now to add my jute twine. I decided to add the jute twine just to help to secure all of these feathers into place. I am going to just add a little dab to the ribbon strip. I'm going to push it into place, allow it to set, and then I'm going to start to wrap the twine around the base of the feathers. So once you have it all nice and wrapped up the way you like it, of course, feel free to add another little dollop of hot glue, and that will help to hold it all into place. So all that's left is to remove the tab from the bottom, turn the switch on, and then place it on your shelf for your beautiful fall decor.
I was
was inspired by Magnolia Home and Anthropologie's boho style throw pillows. They range in price from $49 all the way up to $100 each. I had these placemats that I had picked up from a thrift store and I gave them a wash. There's a total of 6, but I only used 2. I had this thick natural cotton fabric in my stash, and using my fabric scissors, I cut some pieces, roughly 2-inch seam allowance on each side. I cut 2 pieces. I took both pieces to my ironing board to get all the wrinkles out. I cut off each corner of my fabric pieces. I now fold up the sides of my fabric to create a hem, and I tack it down just with a little bit of hot glue just to help hold that in place. Now I am allowing that cotton fabric to be just slightly bigger than my placemat. That way here, when I add my fiber fill, it'll give a nice billowy pillow. Using my glue gun, I am gluing the placemat and the cotton fabric together. Keep in mind that the cotton fabric is going to be slightly bigger than the placemat, so you'll want to kind of stretch it as you go along. It may buckle a little bit, but the end result will be a nice billowy pillow and you won't notice the buckling whatsoever. So I did end up with a little bit of excess fabric, but I just cut off the corners and I tucked it inside and you won't even see that. I just guesstimated. You can measure your fabric out if you like. I don't measure, I just go for it. So just use your own judgment on that. So I just glued the sides in on my last side just a little bit, leaving an open pocket for me to be able to fill my pillow. I get my fiber fill from pillows that I purchased at Walmart for $4. I had one in my stash. I'm now going to reach in and release all the spots where I tacked down my hem, as they are pulling a little bit. It's really easy to reach in and just release those points. Once you've released all the tack points and added enough fiber fill, you can start to close the last edge of our pillow. I like to just add a little bit of glue and pull on the fabric, and that will help pull the seams together. I'm just going to go around and make sure that all my seams are closed up and just fluff my pillow up a bit. And here is what a pillow looks like on my daughter's bed. And here is what the pillows look like on our living room couch. These were no fuss, easy pillows to make. So this particular DIY is one that I have used for quite a while. I had this cylinder vase and I wrapped it with some brown craft paper that was sticky on the backside. You could use some white copy paper if you don't have any of this, but I love the fact that it was already sticky on one side. I cut some pieces down to size to wrapped about half to 3/4 of the way up your vase. And the reason why I did that was because I am going to be wrapping these with some beautiful grass twine that I had found at my local dollar store a few years ago. I don't even know if you can get this anymore. Again, it was like a grass twine. So I wanted this to be removable. I also didn't want the glue to stick directly to the glass because I have found in the past the glue really adheres to this glass and I have a hard time getting it off. So to just make it so I can reuse these vases at a later date, I wrapped them with the paper. So to start off with, I'm adding just a bead of hot glue onto the paper and then I'm going to press my twine into place. Once you kind of have the base and foundation of the twine in place, then you don't have to use hot glue all the way around. I did end up for this section only because there was a real big kink in the twine. So I just found it easier just to continue to use some hot glue, but you could use string as well as some jute twine instead of the grass twine. Once you get to the top, you then want to trim off the twine on an angle, such as you see me there, and then glue that into place. And at this point, you can fill this up any way you'd like. I decided I wanted to keep with that kind of natural look, so I have these feathers along with some jute twine and some branches. I wanted to use these feathers as vase filler. So of course, these ones were too short. They would have fallen down to the base of my vases. So to extend them, I'm using branches. I added just a touch of hot glue and now I'm just going to wrap them with some jute twine at the joint there, and that'll help give a nice pretty decorative look, but also to help secure everything together. So I did several of these and they are perfect to use as a vase filler. You can see all of these that I have here. I also have some nice plain branches and I'm going to just kind of create like a bouquet, so to speak, using the branches and the feathers. So you can see here how I have mixed the feathers and the branches together and I just created this beautiful little vignette. You can add some fall florals to this look as well. That would be a really nice touch, as well as some fall decorative elements. I have these beautiful feather paintings that I had done a while ago. I'm going to have that video linked down below for you as well. Just get creative with all the decorative elements that you have. Here, I even mixed these in with some real greenery. Of course, you can do that as well. Again, use your imagination. I am so happy with how these turned out. I don't know about you, but as a crafter, I have so many doilies in my stash, some that I thrifted as well as inherited. For this project, you're also going to need some cotton fabric. Now this doily's got a beautiful shaped edge and I really like the way that looks. I have got a square of my cotton fabric and I want to cut it down to fit the inside of the doily. So to do that, I'm just going to be folding this up as you see me doing right here, kind of into like a triangle, and then I'm going to round off just the one end, and it's not going to create a perfect circle, but it is going to give me a rough idea of the size that I need. And you can see it's still too big, so I am going to continue to cut this down by folding it up until I get the right size that I need to fit inside my doily. So next I'm going to be using some cotton embroidery floss, and you're going to need some sharp scissors for this project. So I have my fabric scissors here. I'm going to thread this needle and tie a knot on the end. I am using a tapestry needle. Now I'm going to be adding a running stitch to the edge of the fabric. And so you want to pull it tight through until the knot comes to the end and stops it. You want to go all the way around the edge of the fabric. What I'm doing is creating a little pouch. And what we are actually creating is a pretty little pumpkin out of this fabric and the doily. Once you do get to the end, you'll want to pull your string. You don't want to pull it too tight at this point because we do need access to the inside of this, but you can see the cute little pouch that we have made here. So now to fill the little pouch, I am adding some pebbles to the bottom, just a few. That way here, this little pouch will sit nicely without it toppling around on the counter. Next, I'm adding some fiberfill. I just use some pillows that I pick up from Walmart. They're pretty cheap. They're about, I think, $4.50, something like that. Once it's filled, you want to pull your strings tight, and then you want to tie it together just with a simple knot. You can then clip off the excess string, and now you can start to decorate this little puff. I'm using some branches. This branch here is just one that I had foraged from outside, but you can get some little branches like you see here from the craft stores or from dollar stores. I have seen these at Dollar Tree. Next, I'm just going to add some hot glue to the center of our little puff, and then I'm going to add the branch. You can see here it creates a really nice little stem. I do have it sticking out quite a bit, and here is why. I'm now going to place the puff inside of my doily, and I have some string here, again that cotton embroidery thread. I'm just going to gather the top of my doily around that stem, and then I'm going to be using the cotton string, embroidery string, around the top, and I'm going to tie it off tight. You can see that the ruffle of the doily is up over the stem quite a bit, so that is why I chose a longer stem. So once you have that all nice and tied off tight, you can see you've got a cute little pumpkin here. And the beauty of doing it this way is that I didn't use any glue or anything. So if you want to keep your doily in good shape, this is a great way to reuse that doily without using any hot glue. So I like to create some tendrils out of some wire that I have wrapped with some brown florist tape. And I just wrapped it around a pencil, and you can see it creates some really cute tendrils. And of course, feel free to decorate these any way you'd like. So I'm going to create another pumpkin here. I've already prepped it. This is a different shaped edge, and I really love this. My grandma actually made a lot of these doilies as well. And again, like I said before, I have also got them from the thrift store. So this time around, I am using a running stitch all the way around the edge, and I'm attaching my cotton circle fabric to the doily. Again, I'm not using any hot glue here, so you can still reuse the doily if you want to at a later date by taking this apart. If you want, you can use some hot glue, but for this step, you do need to do the running stitch because again, we are creating a pouch. So once you reach the end, again, pull those strings tight, and you can see how with this one, because it's got a cleaner edge all the way around, I was able to gather really nicely without there being a lot of detail on the back. So same thing, add the pebbles, add the fiberfill, pull the strings tight, and leave a bit of a hole at the top there so we can add our stem. So this time I am just adding a little bit of hot glue to the very bottom of that stem. I didn't get any hot glue on the doily. Now I've got this twine covered wire, and again wrapped it around a pencil. I got this at a craft store several years ago, but I have seen some jute covered wire at Dollar Tree, so you could always find that and use that. I'm just going to glue this into place, again being careful not to get glue on my doily, focusing the glue on the stem, and again here is a cute little pumpkin. I'm adding a leaf, using some hot glue to attach it to the stem, and here is my collection of some beautiful vintage doily inspired pumpkins. I love the way they turned out. You don't have to glue anything into place. It's totally up to you. I'm just so happy with how these all turned out for my fall decor. I have more fall inspiration for you to check out here to the right, as well as the full playlist of all the original videos in this particular compilation. Thanks so much for joining me today, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.